field. We were both runners and wrestlers. I went the running route in college. Jimmy went the wrestling route in college. And we just try to highlight programs and coaches that are doing great things, and people that are doing great things. And when you were popped back up onto our radar a couple weeks ago when you were with Ryan, you talked about your experience with wrestling again. And so I've been in education for 12 years, and I've heard a lot of crazy stories of a lot of crazy upbringings, but yours is definitely on the top there. And, saw you get kind of choked up talking about your wrestling coach and how that impacted you and how, he kind of gave you that no quit mindset. And so Jimmy's one of the best bookers in the game. And we thought, hey, let's take a chance and see if Mick will come on and join us and tell us some stories and talk a little bit of wrestling and how that's kind of shaped who you are and kind of changed your life a little bit.
100%.
Awesome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back and we are excited. We have a banger for you this evening. We're going belly to belly with Mick Betancourt. Before we get started, like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure you hit that button. Follow us on Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. Check us out. Drop a comment. We love the feedback. Let us know your thoughts. Jump in on the conversation if you're joining us live right now. And if you're getting any value out of anything we're doing over here, please support the show. Buy us a coffee. Every bean, every sip helps fuel the next episode. Let's not forget why we're doing this over here at Airey Bros Radio. This is a grassroots movement. We spotlight athletes, coaches, creators, and humans we wish we had access to during our journey. If you're a student of life or sport, this one is for you. Tonight's fuel, as always, is brought to you by CS Instant Coffee, athlete-owned, trail-tested, podcast-proven, all-natural energy with no waste and no weight. And a shout-out to Black Sheep Endurance, elite running and nutrition coaching for the long haul. Now on to tonight's guest. Mick Betancourt is joining us. He is a writer and producer. You may have seen his work on SVU, Chicago Fire, Deadly Class, and The Purge. He's also a stand-up comedian. You may have seen him on HBO Comedy Central or the Just for Laughs Comedy Festival in Montreal. Mick is also a content creator himself. He has a Substack where he features some of his essays, fictions, and real stories from his crazy life that we're going to get into. He's also a former wrestler, which is why we have him on. We're going to talk about some of his experiences on the mat and how that has shaped his mindset and his work ethic. Without further ado, Mick Betancourt, it is an honor and a pleasure to have you with us this evening. We greatly appreciate your time. Welcome to the show.
Really, really grateful to be here, guys. Super excited to hang. And anybody that buys you guys coffee over the next hour, I'll match.
Let's go.
Yeah.
So come on, you guys are hustling. You guys are going after it. I'm going to match whoever donates, buys coffee, whatever. Let's get it going.
Well, we do greatly appreciate that. And before we get into it, Mick, anything you would like to plug or promote, anything you've got going on, anything you have coming up, anywhere you'd like us to direct the fans to your work, the floor is yours.
Appreciate that. So I do have a Substack, just hit 66 in fiction, which is a pretty cool milestone for me. I launched it 2 years ago. So you can just put in Mick Betancourt Substack. It'll take you there. There's a 7-day free window that I'm going to keep open. So you can go, you can have access to all the stories. There's like 97 stories on there right now. And also a few episodes of the podcast, which you can't get anywhere else. So, but I'm also a writer and executive producer, one of the executive producers and one of the writers on a show called Reacher, which is on Amazon. And season 3 just dropped. The finale actually just dropped this past Thursday. But if you haven't checked it out, it's a really fun, exciting kind of thriller show. 8 episodes for season 3, and we're going to start on season 4 in June. And
Awesome.
at Mick Betancourt on all socials.
And we'll put all that stuff in the show notes for you as well, Mick. But I think a great way to kick this off, and I think inquiring minds, mostly Jimmy and I, we want to know what's the situation, what's the status with morepancakes.com?
So here's what happened. I'm on GoDaddy, playing the game like we're all playing, buying various names like Rice Pudding Warlord.com, which I bought Christmas Day. Is a little gift to myself. I am also the proud owner of FattyMakeBoomBoom.com. And I think in the fray, morepancakes.com got away from me because this is a very cutthroat game that we're all playing on the .com world. And it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy.
You still got sipping a 40 in the basement.com?
Those are the two that got away. Those are the two. But I did own both of those for sure.
Awesome. Well, Mick, we like to start off with a through line. You know, we like to make the world smaller. Let our guests know how we came to be fans, or they came on our radar, and then also let our fans know about all these sorts of things. So, I've been got into the crab feast pretty early on, not at the ground floor, but pretty early on. And what goes on between Jimmy and I, there's 11 years between us, and so early on, a lot of times in life, I was the one that was hipping him to a lot of things. And as we've gotten older, he hips me to a lot of things. But I was taking a road trip. I was driving from Colorado to Oklahoma, and I was actually searching for stuff for Joey Diaz because we're Jersey guys. And so that was when I first found out about the crab feast. But then, obviously, as most people do with that show, they go through the whole run through all of them. And so, in those episodes, there are some times where people come on and they talk about wrestling. You happen to be one of those people that talked about wrestling, and then that kind of led us into a little rabbit hole of finding things out about you. And you recently popped back up on Ryan's new podcast, The Honeydew, and you talked about wrestling again. And you know, you spoke so highly of your wrestling coach, and I think Jimmy and I are kind of on the same page, even though we had different wrestling coaches. I don't think if you mentioned our wrestling coaches, we would get choked up like that. So we wanted to have you on because you know you're doing amazing things, and as I mentioned, we don't necessarily have to get into the whole backstory. People can go dig up those episodes and hear those. We don't want to kill too much time with you talking about that, but you've got some amazing stories that you know, for what most people would think. If they hear those stories, they wouldn't think that you're in the position that you're in. And I think a lot of that has to do with your time on the wrestling mat and how that changes people in terms of their work ethic, their ability to suffer and get through things and persevere. And so we want to get into some of that stuff with you, but I think Jimmy also has another through line for you.
Yeah, I want to add something. It was around 2013, I would say 2014, you had the Mick Betancourt podcast. And if he gave you a 5-star review, you would send us a t-shirt. So I had a t-shirt, a Mick Betancourt podcast. I would wear it to wrestle and practice. And we even did that for a while, trying to get people to give us 5-star reviews. Didn't work as well as it worked for you. I think you got like 500. But I used to love listening to you. I think Sickler might have said it one time on a podcast about like, oh, someone who had a way worse childhood than me, and I could listen to your podcast and listen to your stories and be like, oh, Rich, we grew up in Candyland, compared to Mick. So just hearing your stories just motivates me, just knowing where you are, what you've done with your life, and it's never been an excuse. You're someone who's been a self-starter, and I think that's what attracts us to your story and who you are. Is you don't use that as a crutch, you use it as motivation and fuel.
100%. But I think anybody, I look back and I shared this on the Honeydew, like I replayed my losses, not because I'm like Uncle Rico on Napoleon Dynamite, like I could throw this football over the mountain. Like it wasn't a glory day thing for me. It was humiliating because I knew I could have done better. Like I knew when I quit, and because it was so drilled into me, maybe in the best of ways and at times the worst, like to quit on the mat, and where I just didn't have any more gas in the tank, and I submitted, and there's nothing that has ever been, I've panhandled on the street. Maybe that's close of like how people look at you when they're like this bum, but I was a kid. It's awful, man. To lose like that and to try to go out and do your best and fail and not have enough. And it was a mind fuck for me. Can we swear on this or no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're from
So
Jersey.
it was a mind fuck. It really was a mind fuck of like, how do I win? And wrestling is beautiful because winning is Suffering is subjective when you start to wrestle. Like it had one definition before you start wrestling, and then it gets completely redefined. Suffering's a punishment, and maybe parts of wrestling are a punishment, but to really go after a very simple beauty, a very simple, magnificent state. The heights that I hit in wrestling probably weren't like, let me, because we're early in this interview, let me just, and you have such exceptional guests. I want to say this.
I think I know
You
what's
guys,
coming, Rich.
like you guys have listened to the podcast, like I love wrestling and I am an average wrestler because you guys have great guests. So I am here as an advocate of the fucking magnificence that is going into a wrestling room and grinding it out. I think I was really talented and muscularly gifted when I was younger and way stronger for my age and size. And so I started wrestling in 8th grade. I wrestled freshman year and I quit because I had some family stuff going on that I can go into if you guys want to hear that, where I was living alone with no parents. My mother was suffering from mental health issues, and alcohol and drug addiction. And was like MIA. I was living in an empty apartment in this 2-flat in a neighborhood called Berwyn, which is on the border of Chicago. And I was going to the school during the day and working at a restaurant at night and cutting weight. I was wrestling 132 freshman, 119 in 8th grade, 132 freshman year. So maybe my cut was from like 150. And I quit going into sections. And I felt disgusted about myself. I've never told this story ever on any podcast. I moved in with my aunt and uncle to get some stability and food and some consistency and some love. And I felt like I betrayed the team. I betrayed a friend. We were best friends, and we started in 8th grade, and we went to the same school, and he was on the team. And I told him that I wasn't going to be wrestling anymore. And sophomore year didn't wrestle. Junior year didn't wrestle. And then senior year, I couldn't live with myself anymore. And it was a different coach. And I said, I'd like to come out. He goes, you haven't wrestled. You're just going to get chewed up. I go, well, it's still wrestle offs, right? He goes, yeah, like you're not, where were you at now? And my walk around was like 180. I go, I think I can get down to 152. And he goes, if you can get down to 152, it's a beast at 152. Like you're not, you could try, you can come work out with us, but there's no way that you're going to get 152. And that was all I needed to hear. That was all I needed to hear. So I was like, all right, I want to earn it. I don't want anything for free. I don't want any favors. So went and trained and picked off the 152 guy. And for me, like that was like winning a Division I championship. So that's why I say it's subjective. Like for me, it was like you could say I'm a quitter. I did. I quit. I'll own it. I'm not going to I did. I quit. But am I a quitter? What's the definition of a win for me was I went back and I fought for a spot and I got it. And I had a great season. And it bothers me to this day, which is why I'm telling the story for maybe somebody that's on the fence. Like I should have dug a little deeper. I should have coexisted with, it was poverty, it was dysfunction, it is what it is. There's other people that I should have tapped into their story and used that to inspire me and go, I just have to get through this. I just have to figure out a way to stay on this team in this sport, no matter what. And, some people go through their lives, they have no regrets. I regret that.
Is there any part of you that, hey, I went back out my senior year? You didn't have to go back out your senior year. Did you find that as a win, or do you still, man, I really missed those 2 years?
Yeah, both. And I think that's the frustrating part. The reason why I say it's a win is I remember the practices where I went to places that I didn't think possible more than any medal that I won. I remember and trying to cut some corners and my wrestling partner being like, absolutely not. Just saying the right thing at the right time and not letting me slow down and pushing me harder, and then returning that favor, knowing, okay, this is what we're doing for each other. we're in the trenches like this together. So when he would cut corners a little bit, I would go, come on, like I remember that more than any big pins, any medals. To me, it was the lessons that I learned in the room and who I became in the room translated more to life for me than anything that actually was executed on the mat. Because at that time, that's 6 minutes, which is great. I mean, I can tell you the first match that I had from freshman year, my first match senior year, when I came back at 152, I was shitting my pants. I was super fucking nervous. I'm wrestling varsity against a good team and a good 152-pound kid. And I mauled this kid. Zero technique. Not the reason why I think I stuck him in 6 seconds because he could not. I did not wrestle. You know what I mean? Like there was nothing to defend. He couldn't sprawl. He couldn't. There was not. I was a feral lunatic wildebeest coming after this kid. I was so scared and terrified that I had pushed and pushed and pushed to get back on the team, pushed and pushed and pushed in the room, pushed and pushed and pushed, finally got a spot. Now, all right, here you go. Go out, 152, lock, toe to toe. Now what do you have? And I just mauled this kid. And that's funny because the next time I wrestled him again, a couple months later, he goes, yeah, that's not going to happen again. And he stuck me in like a minute and a half.
Well, Mick, I think it was also in that time of your senior year, you have a pretty funny story. And Jimmy and I grew up, when we grew up, we were big Iowa and Oklahoma State guys. And there's a name that a lot of our guests will probably recognize when you tell this story. But you had the opportunity to wrestle Joe Williams. And he was
chewing gum. I go, he's chewing gum. And the ref goes, yeah, he's Joe Williams. And I was like, oh, should I just lay down? Like instead of starting neutral, I'll lay on my back and he can just put a finger on my forehead. Totally crazy. Yeah, that was my shoot moment where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna train all season. And I'm gonna show Joe Williams a little something. This is gonna be like the guy that beat Gable for his one loss in college. Here it comes. And I was like a that kid played with me like somebody that's excited to get like a shelter puppy out. It was just, you have the shelter puppy on your lap and then you're just playing with a little bit. You turn it over, you rub its belly. There was no amount of strength. It was just so superior to anything that I was capable of engaging in.
Now, were you coming up in Chicago? Were you familiar with the Harvey Twisters? Does that?
Oh yeah. That's a grade school team, right?
Yeah, they're pretty well known around the country as a pretty top-notch club in Chicago, and doing really good things with a lot of kids that are in rough homes or in rough areas and stuff.
Harvey's no joke. Venom Cats was the top of they were always winning state, that club, in the grade school level.
Okay.
Mick, I'm curious, at what point did the writing and the stand-up come into play, and what part of your wrestling lessons, experiences did that kind of help as far as getting on stage, showing up to write, things like that?
It was the consistency that I got into the room that at a certain point, which you both well know, both from wrestling and having to persevere when my mom and my uncle were runners and would always talk about hitting the wall and just being in pain while running. And just like, you don't stop running. It sucks and you just keep going. So I think my relationship with suffering and being uncomfortable and the voice that's like, quit too hard, quit too hard, quit. I call it K-fuck radio. And sometimes it's blaring and then other times it's just like a little murmur, but it's always on. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but for me, I think when I was younger, I certainly was obnoxious, Like just would from because I was insecure, I'd want to be loud and control the situation. But inside I was terrified. And wrestling just allowed me to weather the storm, any storm, any storm. And at the same time, so I was wrestling, but I was writing poetry and I was skateboard, like a lot of things that normally wouldn't go together. I mean, wrestling, contrary to wrestlers know this. I don't think there's really a wrestler that considers themselves a jock, like say in the football kind of sense. But people thought I was a jock because I was cut and I was playing a sport, but I would also do like sketch comedy and write, and that kind of grit that I got in the room translated to just like whatever it is that I'm doing, finish. And it turns out that that's the hardest thing. Like everybody's got a great idea, zero execution. Everybody has a dream, zero execution. Like you guys listen to the podcast. I have this thing that I talk about all the time, like day 67. First week, man, you're going to kill it. Your friends are calling. Oh my God, you're doing the new thing. It's great. We wish you the best of luck. Fill in the blank of what the dream is. You're going to do a coffee truck, cupcake truck, start the bakery, used bookstore, whatever the fuck it is, podcast. Amazing. We're going to listen. People got lives. They're going to fucking veer off and support you as much as they can, even your folks. They're going to love you till, you got to get your shit together. What's day 67 look like when no one is after your dream but you? It's just you. And you don't want to do it, and it sucks, and it's not shiny anymore, and you don't have the listeners, and you don't have the viewers, and the stand-up set's not funny, and fill in the blank. It's hard, and it sucks. And, it's 1 a.m, and you're staring at the ceiling going, am I nuts? Is this fucking absurd? Like, does no one give a shit? Like, is this even like just bleh. Fuck it, you're gonna have to kill me, man. That's what I learned in the room. You're gonna have to fucking kill me. That's how this is gonna go. But I'm also the asshole that, like, when a guy was cross-facing me that I knew was gonna beat me, I'd break my nose with his hand just to fuck with him a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, so I wouldn't only listen to me a little bit.
Mick, I am right there with you. I was at a wrestle camp, and the Iowa guy was another counselor with me, and he thought he was gonna beat me up, and he was giving me that hard cross face, and I just started hitting my head against the mat, like, you ain't gonna do shit to me. And he's just
Yeah.
like, you're fucking crazy, bro.
Yeah, you thought you could hurt me. Watch what I do to myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny you talk about day 67, Mick, and by the time this goes out on audio, this will probably be, up and upwards of episode 355, 356.
Wow, good for you guys.
So one thing that athletics and wrestling has taught us is 80% of success is just showing up. And if there's one thing Jimmy and I know how to do is when we're into something, we're going to show up and we're going to continue to do it, whether it's get in the car and drive 90 minutes to a place to go train that people can't believe that we get up at 4 a.m. to go meet them to train when they're getting up at 6 to walk in the door. But we're gonna keep showing up and we're gonna keep grinding. So we do appreciate that mindset and that sentiment that you're sharing with us. Curious, with that kind of wrestling mindset and just that hard work, what is your writing process like?
Can I give one quick shout out to something else that
Sure.
is up there with wrestling that I think a lot that to me is the same definition of success with wrestling, which is skateboarding. And I fucking love skateboarding. Oh, my shit's in the garage. But so I've been skating since probably 5th grade. I got a little tiny plastic board when I was like in kindergarten, and I would ride it on my knees, and I hit a pebble and I blew out all my baby teeth with it. So like to me, the combination of wrestling, but also skateboarding, like X Games, whatever, that's a whole fucking other thing. Going into a skate shop, listening to good music, seeing other people dressing kind of funky the way they want to dress, finding their own style, their own voice, the way that like their the way their skating style, their fashion style. But if all 3 of us go and skate, and I can do handrails, and you guys can just ollie the curb, if I see you guys do it, you're winning. Like if you do it and you just push it a little bit because you're trying this new trick, we're not competing to be the better guy. I'm competing to find some shit out with me but I'm watching you, seeing where you're at, and I want you to grow and elevate because there's no winner. It's just doing our own, finding our own best, which is why I used that term subjective earlier. Like, if you can get into a wrestling room, that's a huge fucking win. And if you go, unless I win state, I'm not really a wrestler, well, then you're robbing all of the little wins that you're going to have throughout the entire season. Now, if you're the person that needs that mindset of like, I need the big thing, I need to go for state, I need to have that, that's fine. But I can just tell you, as like somebody that's a little older now, like, you're going to rob yourself of a lot of fucking joy of something really beautiful if that's it. Because as you guys know, because you come from a really tough wrestling state, Jersey doesn't fuck around. There's only one winner at every weight class. So is everybody else a fucking loser that wrestles in Jersey? No. No, they're fucking awesome. You know, and I'm not the everybody gets a trophy thing. Did you show up? Did you go to Fatigue Plus One? I didn't even know that was a thing until I got into a writer's room or a wrestling room. But that went into the writer's room where I have nothing left, plus one. Like, what a gift. Like, what? But you need Jerry Ruffino, my coach in grade school, to go, you're not done. And you're like, who? You know, who? You're dry heaving. And you're like, what are you talking about? 25 more push-ups. Are you insane? Well, all right. And then you do them and you're like, oh, there's rooms in the house I didn't even know existed. But you need that great coach to just be like, nope. Now, my freshman year coach hit me and I was getting fucking, horrific fucking violence at the house. So it would trigger. He was probably what you guys were talking about. But maybe you guys had some shitty coaches. I don't think he meant it. He was just an old school knucklehead that thought, slapping the shit out of a fucking 14-year-old freshman was a good idea. But it didn't work for me. You know what I mean? It just didn't.
Yeah. Jim, you know all about Plus One, right?
I do. Our listeners may have heard this story before, but Rich used to do that to me a lot. And there's a place by where we grew up called the Manasquan Reservoir. And Rich used to take me there running, and he'd be like, oh, we're going to do fartleks. We're going to do, 5. And we would do 5. And then I would stop and go, what are you doing? I go, we're done. We did 5. No. We got one more set. I'd go all out, one more set. I'd stop. Like, what are you doing? He's like, well, we're done when I say we're done. I'm like, bro, you said we had 5. And now we're on like 20. And I'm like crying. I'm bawling. Snot's coming out of my nose. He did that to me a couple times. Moral of that story, I will never go to Manasquan Reservoir to this day with my brother Rich.
There's a great video of Gable showing
Apples.
how to throw throwing the dummy. And there's a kid, he finally gets it. And he goes, all right, give me 5. And the kid's like, great. He goes, give me 5 more. And the kid's like, oh my God. He's like, 5 more. And everyone's like, what's happening? But what you just said now, there's infinite possibility, right? Because once your brain's like, oh, it may never stop, and you prepare yourself for that, it's what both you guys were talking about, real world. The real world doesn't give a fuck. Real world doesn't stop. Real world isn't 5 fucking reps. It's every day, all day. And I know I can't wait to see the comments when I look at this, because they're gonna be like, this guy looks like he's made of fucking rice pudding and fucking chocolate chip Ben and Jerry's cookie dough. What the fuck does this guy know? Believe me, I own a mirror.
Mick, I like that you brought up skateboarding, because Rich and I grew up in a surf and skate town, and only time I've ever had a concussion in my life is when I tried skateboarding. So I wasn't a skater, but we grew up with friends that were skateboarders and surfers. And I always said, like, if I ever coached again in that town, I would go after the surfers and the skaters, because they're some of the most athletic people I've ever met. But people don't think of that because they're at the 7-Eleven jumping the stairs, or they're at the train station doing the rails. But people don't think of those kids as athletic, but they're the most athletic kids in the school.
Yeah, I mean, the tail of a skateboard is this big, and you're looking at a kid ollieing, going backwards down the stairs and hitting this much to slide down the rail, and then kicking it off, and then going back the other way. Like, if you just watch some videos on YouTube, and it's not even Like pros are doing insane shit. It's just kids filming themselves. It's mind blowing, the athleticism. It's like figure skating. And here's the funniest part. I was watching videos with my wife, which I'm sure she's elated. It's a 52-year-old woman as I'm showing her skateboard videos on YouTube, her dream come true. And but I'm like, not only is this happening, there's like a security guard trying to grab the kid while he's spinning around down a 10 set of stairs, landing between two cars going this way and like some guy going to work. So it's like, it's not even like gymnastics in the enclosed environment where there's like someone there to catch you and there's pads. Like the world is happening and they're like, yeah, but I still got to do this. And there's a good chance I'm going to fall, but fuck it.
Well,
And no one cares if I land it but me and the four people and my four friends. Like that's the beauty of it.
Well, since we're on skateboard, and I'll share a little story here. I know you talk about how we're all, everyone's just cheering for winning that inner battle, hitting that inner trick or whatever. And just Jimmy mentioned skateboarding and surfing, whereas it really wasn't on the menu growing up, but I snuck it in and dabbled a little bit and then kind of put it away for a while. And then I just happened to have the opportunity to be at a skate park Amsterdam at the Amsterdam Amateur, and
Oh, cool.
was there just messing around. We had a friend who was in the competition, but I was messing around a skateboard, and my friend stopped and he's like, "Bro, you push Mongo?" And I was like, "What?" He's like, "You push Mongo," and he started laughing at me. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "You're on the board the wrong way, pushing with the wrong foot." And I'm like 35 years old. No one ever fucking told me I was skateboarding the wrong way.
It's awesome.
So I had to relearn how to push on a skateboard.
Oh, wow. That's
Like,
funny.
can't be
Did you
going around.
skate?
I mean,
Can't be going around Mongo.
can't be going around
I've seen
Mongo
him
looking
drop
like a
in on a
jack-off.
half pipe before.
No way.
On a mini ramp, but that was a whole other thing where people were doubting my ability to do it, and they gave me just a little coaching. It was just like lean forward and just stomp down on it, and
Yeah.
that's what I did. And I think everyone kind of rushed onto the ramp, and like I just hit a 920 or something.
But see, isn't that awesome?
It
Like there
was
was
awesome.
probably like a semi-pro there, and you got the love because you got to hit that little, you got to experience something new and everybody celebrated. I think that's fucking awesome.
Did the little tap on the ramp.
Yeah. That's
Mick,
awesome.
I'm curious, what came first, the writing the scripts or the comedy?
So I started writing poetry first in grade school, and then I wrote with the kid that I wound up starting wrestling with, this kid Mike Kona. We would steal copy paper from the office and we would draw comics. Like he would draw them and I would write the story and he would draw them. And we would they were like gossip rags for the grade school. We realized we were selling for a quarter, that we would sell more if we put in like stories of like the principal and the kids of like what was happening in the school. So it was like National Enquirer, but our comics. So that was like my transition from poetry to writing. And I would write short stories and like one act plays in grade school and high school. And then I did 1 year of college. I have 3 college credits, 0.453 GPA. I know there's a lot of people on here going to brag, but when you achieve excellence like a 0.453, I don't think I should hide that. I think I got to put that out to the world. So once I did that, I was like, man, working as a short order cook, a bouncer, fence, pool hustling, bouncing around, writing all of those stories. And then I started taking classes at Second City and Improv Olympic because Chicago's a big improv town. And at that same time, I started going to comedy open mics, and I would just write a couple of words, not necessarily write out the whole act. You get 5 minutes set at these open mics. You just put your name on a list. They announce it. It's mostly comedians. You die a horrible death, and then you just weather that storm. It's like being new in the wrestling room. You're just going to get thrown around. You're going to be exhausted, full crisis of confidence. And I was just like, I think I can figure this puzzle out. Because if I can be funny in the real world, I just have to figure the transition to making it on stage. So I just studied tape. I listened to all the comedy albums that I could get my hands on. And then I would watch tape like it was game tape. I would watch it with the sound off. I would watch it frame by frame to see how people moved. Where did they, oh, you set up here, you set up here, you throw the punchline down the middle, like just little cool theatrical things. And I got discovered as a comedian in 2001 in Chicago at the Chicago Comedy Festival. And then I wound up moving out to LA. The cool thing is, if you go to LA, you're an actor, you're one of millions. But as a comedian, you're kind of the arbiter of your own destiny because you stand on the stage and hit it and build your own brand. So I got an agent and a manager from that, started booking acting roles. And then when my son was born, I needed something that was more steady. And so I called my agent and I said, listen, this is going to sound crazy because I've been doing comedy for the last 5 years, and I write dramas. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, everybody in Hollywood knows you as a comedian. I go, I know, but they get paid every week and it's just more stable. And they go, why don't you write comedies? I go, I just want to jump in front of the camera. And then I'm going to get back into that really volatile, unstable kind of, you're auditioning and you're doing the whole thing. And so she said, fine, let's give it a shot. And I wound up getting staffed. My first job was on the Black Donnellys, and then Law and Order SVU was the next one. And I'm now on my 17th show, 20 years
So
later. What, 20? Yeah, 25 years later.
I'm going to ask you a super cringe
20 years later.
question, super
Yeah.
basic question, but do you write in script format or do you just write it all out on the page and then do you format it afterwards?
No, that's a great question. So I still like writing freehand. So I'll write in this. This is a journal that I've had forever, like a journal cover. It holds a composition notebook. But then one of the tricks of the trade that I learned being in a writer's room was this dry erase board. So I will like just put beats of a story down, just general, and then you just kind of drill deeper, drill deeper, drill deeper. So it's in a writer's room, you're doing what's called breaking story. So it starts as the story wide, and then it just kind of gets narrowed down. And then you ultimately wind up, what you're talking about on the structure side is you use like final draft, and then you actually write the scene. But if I were to do this beat, it would be, Jimmy, Rich, and Mick are on the podcast. They talk about wrestling. That's all, but there'd be no dialogue to it. It would just be, that would be what the beat is. And then I myself, or if the episode gets assigned to somebody else, would then flesh that out and actually have to make that very simple 2-sentence, single sentence thing come alive.
So I know that's your career and that's what you do for a living. So going through the process is part of it. Do you ever get anxiety about it, or just why isn't this coming out fast enough, where you have to go through the process of you're going in the journal, then you're putting beats on the board, and then you're actually doing it? Do you ever have trouble where fuck it, I'm not doing this is taking too long? Or obviously not, because that's your profession.
Yeah, I mean, Charles Schultz had a great quote about writer's block. He's like, do you think a plumber has plumber's block? Like, it's my approach was very working class, very blue collar. Like, I don't wait for a muse. I don't wait for inspiration. Again, it goes back to the writer's room. Like, I don't go and like, oh, Tuesdays, I'm not feeling it, guys. It's like, fuck off. We're going to run right through you. It's like, there's no mystery to it. And here's a weird thing. Like, I mean, I'm really loving that we're talking about this. I view it as I view most things as relationships. This might sound fucking crazy, but I have a relationship with writing, right? And so I how am I holding up my end to this relationship? Am I altruistic? Am I bringing my best self to it? Am I nurturing this? And then when I do that, just like if I was in a relationship with somebody and that's what I'm bringing, man, what comes back? Woo. And when I'm ice cold on it and I'm selfish and I'm not, I feel it on the comeback. And so it's the longest relationship that I've ever had is with writing, because I just grew up really poor, and I went to the library by my grandmother's house, and it was like, first off, when you're broke and someone's going to give you something for free, Like you get this card. There's a bookstore, you got to pay for books. But I get this little card, you're going to give it to me for free. Like that was, you know what I mean? Like if you're broke, you're like, oh, I get some free shit. Like this is awesome. Well, like I would just get books because I was like, there's a place that charges for this. You guys know that? You guys are losing out on this end. So I would get books, and I remember I got The Great Gatsby. It's like in grade school, so I didn't really understand a lot of it, but I knew that my uncle told me this is like one of the best writers of all time. Now, this is around 85 Bears, right? So the Chicago Bears are going crazy. I think Jordan was just, like the sports were amazing. We were all trying to play like Jordan and be like Jim McMahon. I open The Great Gatsby and I see the sentence and I just write it out on a piece of paper. I had a pen and I just wrote it out. And I had this weird epiphany of like, not like plagiarism, but like I just wrote the same sentence as one of the greatest writers in the history of literature, F. Scott Fitzgerald. And I saw the alphabet like musicians see notes. Like, oh, fuck. Like, this is just, he thought this and he went with this sentence. I'm never going to dunk like Jordan. I'm never going to play for the Bears. We were, but I can do this. Like, this makes sense to me. And this is the 73-cent composition notebook. I've been doing this since grade school. Fuck you. Try to stop me. You know what I mean? Pen and a paper. They can't take it away from me. I mean, I did grow up poor with a chip on my shoulder against rich people and entitled people. And I could take this pen, man, and crack open this and not write, "Dear diary, the world kicked me in the dick again today. I'm such a fucking, woe is me." Fuck off. I was like, man, I'm going to create worlds and characters and write some cool shit and some poetry and fuck it. I knew I didn't have the $40,000 thesaurus that I needed for an MFA program. So I was like, I got a library card and a notebook, man. Let's go. Let's go. And for anybody out there that's thinking about writing, fuck the pedigree, fuck some hierarchy, go get a notebook, go get a pen, suck, write some horrible shit. There'll be some good shit in there. And then just the more you do it, the better you're going to get. And have a relation. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is don't let somebody else, including you, talk yourself out of having a relationship with something that you want to have a relationship with because you don't think you deserve it, or it's for other people, or it's for, whatever, college. Fuck all that. Go to get a 50-cent notebook and a fucking pen and go at it. What's more beautiful than that? What's more accessible than that? If I want to direct, I need a camera, I need actors. If I want to act, I need a script. There's so many things you need. If you want to write, pen and a paper. Now, whether you sell it or it gets made, that's just another thing. That's a business problem. But if you want to have a relationship with writing, get a fucking pen and a piece of paper and go to town.
Are we going to see a memoir?
Yeah, it's all on the Substack. It's so funny you say that. So 2 years ago, I wrote a memoir and I sent it to a New York literary agent, great person. And they go, yeah, there's no market for working class stories. And all like the bad people in your story are like rich people. And yeah, you read the shit out of that. 100% right. It's just like, well, who's your audience? And I go, people who don't read anymore. And they're like, what are you talking about? I go, yeah, it's working class people, man. They just don't see themselves in stories. I go, my favorite story in there is about a forklift driver named Tony who worked at UPS overnight and then Home Depot from 6:30 to 2:30 so that he could retire early and travel the world with his wife. So, no one's going to tell fucking Tony's story. It's in the book. It's my favorite story. And they're like, well, there's no market for working class stories. I'm like, all right, same thing. Right back to the room. Fuck. I don't give a shit what you think. I'm going. So I started the Substack to just write working class stories. So there's some fiction in there, but it's mostly like autobiographical stories. And 2 years later, man, it just hit 66, which is a fucking huge win for me because the guy's like, it was actually a woman. It was like, yeah, there's no market for this. And I was like, I don't know. I think you're wrong. Plus, I had to be true to my relationship, like we're talking about. Like TV and film, I'm more of a studio musician. I'm hired to play a collective song for, I didn't create Law and Order SVU, but I was super grateful for the opportunity to come and write, to play that music. But if I'm just going to launch my own thing and tell the stories that I want, then the stories that I want to tell are working class stories. And slowly but surely it's built up. And 2 years later, I'm just really proud. I'm proud when people that are just working read my stories on a Sunday after a long week and see a bit of themselves in it, and it honors, working, being in a union, or if you're not in a union, you should, non-union plumber, you're a union plumber, you're an electrician. My cousin Joe's down here in Charlotte working his apprenticeship for the elevator union. Great union. It's like the people that I was with for 18 years out on the West Coast think Joe fucked up. They think he fucked up. He made some mistakes and now he's got to fix fucking elevators. Go fuck yourself. Fuck your stupid face. Joe's killing it. And Joe's one of the happiest guys I know. This knucklehead, I go, how was work today? He goes, a lot of ups and downs. Fucking guy. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's great. And he's covered in fucking dirt, covered with a safety goggles. And he loves it, man. And he's so proud of how hard he's working. It's not a fucking mistake. He's not being punished. And so I just got really tired of that fucking narrative, man. And I really got fucking frustrated at those people getting their fucking dicks kicked in. And I was like, fuck it, man. I'm gonna tell stories about my working class background and the people that I'm still whom I love, and I want to honor their lives and get those stories out there. So the 66 part's cool, but what's really cool is the readers just going, fucking, this is wild, man. This reminds me of my uncle. This is my dad came up like, you know what I mean? Like that to me is like, come on, man. Doesn't get any better than that.
Mick, I'm curious. I got one more for you here. And if Jimmy has one too, but can you talk about your experience with Second City? Because I think anyone that's a fan of comedy or kind of knows of sketch shows and those sorts of things, like there's some pretty famous names that have come out of Second City. What was your experience like? What's the history like, and all of that good stuff?
Well, the history is phenomenal, and Second City had a profound impact on my life. Like you can do the training center, which is like I might fuck this up. It's like levels or A through E, and then you audition to get into the conservatory, and that's like 1 through 5. And then you have a graduation show, which we actually got to do on the main stage, which is where everybody came through. It started as an improv group called The Committee, I believe, in San Francisco. It was like Alan Arkin, Mike Nichols, I believe. There's a great book that I used to have that has it. But yeah, they had a writing program there. And, Chicago was kind of dead at the time. Like the comedy boom of the 80s had bust. There was one comedy club left open, and it was really Second City was viewed. So there was Second City, there was Improv Olympic, which was Del Close and Charna Halpern opened that. And then Mick Napier had a thing called the Annoyance Theater, and I took classes with a guy named Joe Bill over there. So I went through all three. Improv Olympic was an hour-long Herald. Second City was sketches, very short. And then Annoyance was the punk rock place. It just like, fuck you. Like Second City's like, you're supposed to say yes and Mick Napier's thing was like, no, fuck you. Like, or put somebody on their heels. Like, let them fight in the scene to get something magical. So I got like a lot of great stuff from all three places. At IO, on Saturdays at midnight, they would have an improv jam. So all the best improvisers would kind of pop in and try to get up on stage and do stuff. And it was packed. It was just a time and a place where everything was lined up. It was electric. But Saturday Night Live was pulling people from Second City and has since it started. It was mostly Second City, Chicago, and Toronto. And now Groundlings out in LA is a big pool. And then UCB is now a great theater that's doing some improv and some sketch. But for me to go through that whole process, I write dramatically with the improvisational tools that I was taught at Second City to just keep it completely open. So, so I don't go, I see it this way and it's exactly this way and it has to work this way. It's like I put it into this improvisational process where I allow it to find the game and the scene, even though it's dramatic, and like like also a way to see the world and experience the world, which is actors, of course, do this. Writers can get very heady and they can forget that if you're writing theater or sketch, TV or movies, that humans have to say it. It can get very kind of just in between your ears. But like Second City literally was like, if you're going to have a glass, I'm holding the glass, but how much does it weigh? So like I've been drinking this through the podcast. How like be aware, be conscious in your life of how much does the cup that you drink coffee with every morning. Don't dismiss that experience. Hold it so that when you're in the scene, are you holding the whole cup or are you just holding it from the tiny like just little stuff like that? For some reason, really, I started walking around, I was like touching everything, like just like what? It was just weird. It's like the world opened up. I was like, what? How much does this weigh? Like how would I hold a book? Like their one thing was like, this is not a gun, like this is a gun. Like just and it seems so corny and so cheesy, but like when you really start to go down the rabbit hole and you're trying to build a creative experience and you're trying to like put arrows in your quiver of things that you have access to, I found it incredibly informative and beautiful. And it really, really it helped me, I think, more than anything across because I can drop that into my when I'm acting, when I'm producing on set, I can see if an actor's jammed up and I can improvise with them a little bit to kind of get them out of their head. Like it's really helped in a lot of areas in my life.
I lied. I got
Appreciate
one
you
more.
sharing that. Sorry.
I know you mentioned your love of the notebook and the writing and the pen and the process, but you also done acting. You also done comedy. Do you have a favorite?
I'm at a weird stage in my life where I think the core of the thing that I love the most is writing.
Yeah.
But then the tentacles of that go like, I'm going to tour these stories. So like Ryan Sickler and I, those are the posters of the shows that he and I did. Like Sickler's a storyteller too. It's great. I love him like a brother. Like I want to do what David Sedaris does. I want to have the Substack or maybe a book eventually, and then I just tour the stories. Like we were doing 100-seat punk rock venues, and it was awesome. We just put like 100 or 200 chairs in there. I prefer those smaller, intimate venues, and then I'll do 45 minutes to an hour, but not just like some ego jerk off. Like I really want to have be this like fun, entertaining experience. So it's not like some intense poverty porn. It's like the full spec. You're going to laugh. You might get a little teary eyed, but you're going to leave feeling fulfilled, like you were told something that had a through line.
Mick, you said you have a relationship with your writing process. Does that relationship ever get too heavy in the process of writing where you're letting some stuff out and it's like, oh, I kind of just let some trauma out. I just kind of let some deep stuff out. Do you ever get to those points where you might have to step away from it, or do you dive deeper into it when you get to those points?
Well, I think that think it was Faulkner that said, if the writer's not crying, the reader's not crying. So I kind of, in a perfect word, feel like I'm experiencing the story that ideally the same way the writer will or the reader will, but I never know because I'm not obviously there with them. But I do think that any writer, I'm not going to talk to any other writer. What I need to be careful of is honoring the story. So my job, if you're going to read something of mine, is it has to be entertaining. You have to be told a story. So if I'm trying to just get something off my chest or soapbox, like a lot of people, like politics is very popular right now, like you need to know my opinion. You shouldn't know I'm in the story. You know what I mean? Like I should just lure you in with a great first sentence or a promise or a premise and get you into the story, and you have to just come along and you're with the characters and their stakes and oh shit, how is like just Aristotle wrote poetics 4,000 years ago. Same shit today. Hero needs something, There's obstacles in the way. If the hero gets what they want and new obstacles or a new want isn't introduced, story's over. It's like fundamentals win the game. So like if it's, I can't be precious, right? Like to answer your question, if there's something that might motivate a story, but if that's louder than a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you feel like, wow, I just dedicated 20 minutes of my life to read the short story. What the fuck was that? Oh, he's sad. His grandfather died. That's just me like hijacking you into a therapy session instead of honoring our relationship, which is, I like your writing. I'm willing to, read your story. And I go, great. I'm not going to fucking let you down. Like I'm going to honor your time. And my job is to give you something worthy of that.
Thank you for sharing some of your techniques, asking for a friend. So I appreciate that.
Well, tell them, Jim,
Yeah.
Tell them what?
that you graduated from film school
Yeah.
and you've written scripts and done movies, and this is
That's
what
awesome,
you
man.
do.
Yeah, I've kind of been in a struggle, so it's been good to talk to you like this. And me and Rich always have the conversations. I'm always like, man, I need to figure out a way to take that same drive I have from wrestling and put it into creating. And having this conversation with you has really helped. And at the end of the day, I just gotta give myself a smack and get out of my own way and have that relationship with myself and honor it and show up every day just like I would on a wrestle mat. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I got one last thing for you. You
Yeah.
mentioned that 2 years that you left wrestle and you really regret that, and that's something that drives you to this day. You have any advice for any kids that might be wrestling now, listening to this podcast, that might be in they only see their world through this little hole and they think the world's caving in and wrestling sucks and it's making their life harder? You have any advice for a kid who's getting ready to quit?
Absolutely. It goes back to what we were talking about, that success is subjective. So to thine own self be true. But if you're younger, it can get cloudy real quick because a lot of times you're comparing your insides to somebody else's outsides. It's like, especially with like social media where people are presenting the best version of themselves, or you're comparing yourselves to just like a stud who's just who might have a different definition of success regarding wrestling. But if you're on the fence and you love this thing, but you don't think that you're successful at it or you're winning, I would just encourage you to maybe redefine what your definition of success is. It doesn't mean accepting losing. It doesn't mean lowering your standards. It means just kind of coming into your own skin and your own body and being true to yourself and allowing, showing up and giving your best is the win. Can I have 2 minutes? Because that's a great fucking question.
Mick, you can have an hour, sir.
So here's something that was a mind fuck to me for a really long time. And I don't know if you guys relate to this at all. If my best wasn't good enough, I thought I wasn't good enough. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So if my best isn't good enough and I fail, I am a failure. And it was like pouring battery acid on my soul for years. Then I met this guy and he goes, "Did you just say your best?" And I go, "Yeah, yeah." And he goes, "Fuck, that's pretty amazing." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I failed." He goes, "I don't know. You got to experience your best. That's pretty cool. Not a lot of people get to do that." And I was like, "Yeah, but it didn't get the la 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 la." He goes, "No, no, no, man. Don't fucking rob that. Don't rob yourself of that joy. Don't rob yourself of that win." And so to answer directly that question is, if you're going in there and you're putting in work in the room and you're getting a chance to experience your best, that's rare air. Now, if your best isn't the best best, then your best isn't the best best. That's for somebody else. But you as a human, you as a wrestler, getting to experience your own personal best and being okay with that and celebrating that, that's going to open up areas of your mind and your heart and your soul and your capacity to live that is going to blow your mind. I mean, it turned me upside down. It was such a profound shift on how I experienced myself and what my goals were and how I was approaching them. It was unbelievable. And so if you're thinking about quitting, maybe hit the pause button, maybe not the right time to make a decision. If there's a lot of emotion there, get quiet and just see kind of really where you're at. Are you trying to achieve somebody else's best, somebody else's definition of best, or your own?
I appreciate you sharing that, Nick. I'm a high school physical education teacher and a coach, and too often times when the going gets tough, kids are very quick to give up on things, and I think that's really important for them to hear that your best is the best and doesn't necessarily have to be the best as long as you're trying hard and working hard. Things can always get better through hard work, and just because it's a little uncomfortable right now doesn't mean that means it's time to give up. That means it's time to lean in a little bit more.
Because here's what and Jimmy, is that you might not be the best in the wrestling room, but you're preparing yourself to be the best somewhere else that you can't see yet. And if you're practicing quitting, then when you get to the real opportunity that you've been training for and you didn't know about, but the habit is quitting, that opportunity is going to vanish, and that's going to break your heart. If you thought quitting wrestling was going to break your heart, wait, it's nothing. It's nothing. So practice sticking it out. And then when the real opportunity for you shows up outside of the writer's room and you're used to sticking it out and it meets that opportunity, sky's the limit.
Man, that's the sound right there, Jim.
Yeah, I know some listeners needed to hear that. I know I needed to hear that. So thank you for sharing that, Mick. Final four, Rich?
Let's do it.
Mick, are you a coffee drinker?
Yes.
How do you brew your coffee and how do you take it?
Right now I'm working with a Keurig and I do one Splenda, although today started no sugar for 30 days. So I am just taking it black.
All right. Do you have a blend of choice, light, medium, or dark?
My favorite blend, which I've been buying since I was a kid, is On Sale.
I like your style. I like your style, Mick. That's awesome. Mick, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Mick Betancourt?
So I've been sober for 22 years. So I go to a recovery meeting every day, 7 days a week, if I can. And then there are calls that are involved in that, either with who is working with me or the men that I work with. And today is day one of getting up at 5:15 a.m. and saying the rosary.
Okay. Well, I probably should have done this in the beginning, but I do want to give you some more flowers because I believe it was on More Stories, your first episode with Jay Moore, and you talked about a little, talking about your faith and that sort of stuff. And I've added it to my morning affirmations, where it's, dear God, whoever you are, whatever you do, please make me the strongest version. Give me strength and courage to be the best version of myself. So, or something along that. I might paraphrase it a little bit. I have it written down, but I say it every morning and I write it down in my journal. So thank you for that as well.
It's awesome.
Mick, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audio books? Are you reading anything?
Well, let's look at the stack that we got here. So I got Double Carver that I'm working with. Huge fan of Raymond Carver. We've got James Joyce Dubliners. We've got Ordinary People. This month's issue of Poetry magazine. These are just stuff that's. And then I got The Odyssey by Homer. This translation by Emily Wilson's fucking fantastic. So I'm trying to read much more this year as well. That's a great question. I hope that please just start reading. Whatever, we missed you. Just read. It's tough. You're going to feel like you're crawling out of your skin because you're the dumb machine that we all have in our pockets. Like your mind's going to race for other stuff. But once you break through that threshold of around 15 or 20 minutes of going, all right, this is happening. Like it's a really beautiful. I guess it would be maybe like a runner's second win, Rich.
Yeah.
Where you're just like you're going, you're like, fuck, what is this nonsense? And then you're like, oh shit, I'm in this. I will just say the last book that I finished, Stoner, I believe by John Williams, not like a stoner. It's not about a stoner, it's about a guy named Stoner. Right now is the best book that I've ever read. I would say Stoner, I would say like On the Road to Young Men and Women, Stoner is to men. Like how you would experience that book as a young teenage boy. Stoner has written a book about men that just crushes your brain.
Who wrote that?
I believe it was John Williams. Oh, that's in the other room. Here, I'll tell you right now. Hold on. Who wrote? Yeah, John Williams.
All right. Cool. I'm always down for a good book.
Oh, it's so good.
Mick, I noticed the guitars in the background. What do you like to play? What do you like to listen to?
I'm a huge fan of blues. So I used to go see a guitarist by the name of Sun Seals, who's since passed away, play in Chicago at a blues club called Roses when I was in grade school. And then Melvin Taylor, whose birthday is St. Patrick's Day, would always play at Roses on St. Patrick's Day. Of course, Buddy Guy, Little Walter, Sonny Boy Williamson on harmonica. Junior Wells is probably my favorite harmonica player. I think Buddy Guy and Junior Wells alone in acoustics probably my favorite blues album. But those guitars, fuck those guitars, fuck their faces. I get so angry. I can't play them. I'm awful. I've been spitefully failing on those three pieces of shit for 20 years. It's awful. Good. It's awful.
It's a good backdrop. Horrible.
Yeah. Pieces of shit.
Mick, last one we got for you. This is a lighthearted one. We know you're a Chicago guy, so maybe it's deep dish pizza. You just mentioned you're sober, so maybe it's probably not a craft beer. But do you have a guilty pleasure?
Yes. Can I tell you my death row meal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Here it is. Rice pudding with the little film on the top with whipped cream, 3 pops of cinnamon. I set that over there. White styrofoam cup, stale, burnt coffee, and the white styrofoam cup with maybe 2 spoons of like powdered cream and 2 spoonfuls of sugar and a fucking day-old newspaper. Come on! At a diner at like 3 a.m.
Okay.
Are you fucking kidding me? Yes, all day, every day.
With or without in your rice pudding?
What?
With or without raisins in your rice pudding?
I'll tell you what. If I have a choice, I love raisins. I love them. You know what? I'm going to see. I can't put rice pudding in a corner like that. It's too majestic. It's too delicious. Why would I say raisins, no raisins? I feel like we're in a time of great abundance. Like, let's have options here. Why handcuff ourselves? If we're just talking, if we're just using words, if no one's gonna die, I say, let's have both.
Okay. You get down with Cozy Shack?
Oh yeah, they sell it at Costco now.
They do.
Yes.
A big tub of it, or is it?
Oh fuck yes! This isn't the rehearsal.
Mick, thank you so much for your time. Like we said, we have been fans for a while. A lot of your conversations on podcasts have gotten us through some tough times.
That's cool to hear.
I know you've been with me on a lot of walks, and Rich and I can quote your crab feast. I know we're all gonna wake up with black eyes tomorrow after this conversation. But thank you for your work. Thank you for the motivation and advice you gave us tonight, and just keep being you, man, because you've motivated us for a while.
Oh, it's very kind of you guys. It's my pleasure, man. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Absolutely. Mick, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you go and check out Mick's Substack. We'll put that link in the show notes for you as well. And we will be back for a third episode this week. We'll be back tomorrow with Cole Spree from Indian Hills Community College. Remember, they are the 2025 junior college national champions in wrestling. So we're excited to talk to Coach Spree and hear what they got going on out in Iowa and Indian Hills. So we'll see you back again tomorrow at 7 p.m.